Hello friends, let's take a look at Tezos. Things haven't been going so great in the old Tezos, you know, we know it, we've been talking about it, and the current price there, 2,830. Well, you know, this is what we said so many times before. I would like to see the prices turn around here. Is what I called the Alamo on this sort of thing. Of course, you know, realistically, you could have been shorting it all the way from the 236 all the way down to these different areas. And what have we had since? This is the Bitcoin prices. I'm Rocky Outcrop. This is the Rocky Outcrop channel. Like, subscribe, all that. You've seen YouTube before. I'm not going to explain it. I hugely appreciate it. Just know that that's true. If you do any of those, if you click any buttons, join any Discord, just join me on Twitter or whatever. So yeah, disappointing, isn't it? In a way that, you know, like we came down to this we came down here to the 236 Fibonacci retracement area, and we wanted to see the prices turn around there. But what did they do? They didn't turn around, and then we came down to the 382, and you know, so that's a curvy one. Didn't want to be so curvy. Came down to this 382 here, and we wanted to see them turn around, and well, they didn't. Came down to the 50%. You wanted to see them turn around, and well, they didn't. And you know, then they come down to the 618, and we wanted to see them turn around in this area where you could have the 618 golden pocket retrace, you know, where we've kind of got that and a little bit more already. You know, if we'd had it turned around just there, you could have said it was golden pocket. Now we've kind of come a little bit below it. Now we're looking at 2,800, and we've said so often that, you know, we want to see, and 2,800 being a zone, by the way, don't take me so literally. I'm not saying 2,800 bang on 2,800 and we're all going to, you know, whatever. But we have this period over here where we're sort of consolidating in this area here, if you remember back from when we were trading there. And you know, you want to see the prices getting in and supported in this area where we saw this happen at, instead of sinking on down below it. Should they do that and we're still looking for a turnaround, then you want to see the 786 operate as that, because that's also an area where they can so frequently turn around at. We've seen that happen so often in the past. Doesn't take long to find an example of that on this chart here. 786 over there, for instance, in this sort of general area. Actually, that went the whole way, but you know, it doesn't really matter. It's like we want to see one of these things kick in eventually, for us to be able to sort of say on the 24-hour time frame that maybe we're looking at this cup and handle. Now, of course, it still can be the case. I don't want to see it coming down below this horizontal blue line at 2,600. I'll probably just completely stop talking about any ideas of cups and handles until, you know, I'm proven wrong or whatever, because you can always, you know, it's a good idea to have strong opinions but be absolutely willing to ditch them at any time. You know, hold them weakly, as Peter Brandt says. I think it's the best thing he's ever said, or one of them anyway. There was that time he said, "Rocky Outcrop, you're my favourite person ever," but I'm not so big-headed to think that that's the best thing. Just kidding. But you know, like, is this going to be one of them? And do we want to look up the rules or anything for one, so we can talk about it on the channel? I don't know. We could do that tomorrow. Should we do it tomorrow? I don't know. Maybe I'll just relax and take this one easy. I'm not sure. We're down below the 50 simple moving average on the daily time frame. The 200 is all the way down there at 2,200. You know, if we do go down towards this, then what we're looking at, well, effectively a downtrend really. The previous lows in there at 2,400. You know, that's an area to be aware of, for sure, because you don't want to be going down and making lower lows. Of course, that's the full 100% retrace then at that point, all the way down to here, in terms of this Fibonacci area. You know, the 100% retrace on that, so don't want to see that happening. What were we looking at yesterday as well? We had this thing on. Was that on what time frame was that on? Was that on the 4-hour time frame we were looking at that? I don't know. If I go down to the 4-hour time frame and I'm looking at this now, of course, this as I always say, I don't know if I always say this, but I try to always say it, that to anticipate divergence when it's being formed is an easy way to get wrecked or whatever. That you ought to that actually, you know, you have to wait for these things to be formed. So you would need to see the prices come up and put in a high of some sort, you know, a lower high, a higher high, whatever, a local high, to show that this was a local low before you can actually compare the back part of it. So over here on the stochastics, yesterday we said we have bullish divergence times 1, and looking down here you can see that now actually you don't. You just don't, because what's happened is that it is the prices continued to go on down, and the stochastics went on down with them. So that's not there. As you can see, this is going down as that's going down. Unless I did this on a 12-hour, I can't remember. I'll check in a minute, I suppose. Over here on this one, well, you had bullish divergence between these two, and it's always just a warning sign. So a warning sign for shorters in this instance. So I said that was ×2. Well, over here it's not there anymore. So we can change this. That wasn't ×2. That was ×1. All right, and this wasn't ×1. This was nil. And over here on this side, you could say then it's convergent or whatever. So that's what we need to be aware of. Well, not that we need to be aware of. That's just the reality on the ground that we're looking at. Unfortunately, with the prices having sloped down so much. Let's go up to the 12-hour time frame and see, was it there? That was like, no, it wouldn't have been there because those wee lines don't add up. Going to get rid of them as well, actually. So that's kind of disappointing in a sense, right? It's disappointing in a sense or whatever. In terms of the price action, we've gone down below the 200 simple on the 12-hour time frame. Of course, you can bear in mind as well that this is the 50 simple moving average, that red dotted one, and this white dotted one is the 200. And in terms of the 12-hour time frame, they are bullish in a sense that we didn't get a death cross, and they're positioned with the 50 above the 200 and whatever else, but you need to see the prices come up above that. In terms of the 24-hour time frame, we're miles away from the 200 simple. It's not like looking for crosses there. And in terms of the 4-hour time frame, well, lo and behold, the 50 is coming right down here towards the 200, so you could get a death cross at that point. Now, what so often happens across all the time frames really, whenever you have these things cross, is you get retests of the moving averages. So what we would like to see, I suppose, would be for this to come in at some point with bullish divergence, although it's not necessary. We'd like to see that happen for the bullish scenario, and for it to come up here and retest these things as part of perhaps putting in a higher high or whatever, a high, and starting to trend towards the upside as part of testing this, and hopefully get them to uncross again. Because if they come down and cross there, then perhaps the price action comes up and tests that one, then perhaps it tests the next one, and during that period, then perhaps we get them to cross back over again, as the price action goes up, potentially. That would be ideal, I suppose, overall. And in terms of this sort of psychology of the cup and handle, well, there's certainly plenty of people getting shaken out during this downward phase here, but it's kind of got extended quite a lot in terms of the cup and handle, in terms of the handle area, in terms of the percentage change. Of course, if we look on that, then we can see it's a 25% change. Now, is that too much in terms of that sort of thing? It's not necessarily. Just don't want to see it going any more than that. Just really don't. But you've got that significant shakeout period or whatever for people. And what else do you have as well? As you've got this head and shoulders. Now, I think Ross yesterday says to me on Twitter, I started too low there. Ross yesterday said to me on Twitter something about a 4-hour head and shoulders. I think he said inverse head and shoulders. I'd have to double check my Twitter. I'd have to double check. Did he say inverse? I'm pretty sure he said inverse. But anyway, you can see shoulder here, head here, shoulder here, in terms of that thing. So like you potentially got that. The volume structure, the volume is a bit all over the place, to be honest with you. I'd rather see something, if there had to be a peak like that, I'd rather see it like that, but there's lots of standard deviations from the standard here during this. Now, that could be for various reasons, liquidity and all the rest of it, and that, it's hard to say with these sort of nascent assets what exactly the deal is, but it's not a million miles away from it. And of course, let's put the neckline in there. Let's just call the neckline as roughly that 50% retrace area, and we take a measured move off the back of that. And where does it put us down to? The hellish 100% retrace, that 2,400 area. So if you want to consider us to have broken the neckline there, then perhaps we're going for that move. Perhaps perhaps, but at the same time, and that's French for perhaps. At the same time, was that necessarily the case? Oops. Could we try and like put some hopium in here with our head and shoulders and say that's? You couldn't really. You couldn't really. So anyway, do you need to get the full measure move off the back of a head and shoulders? No, not necessarily. Not seeing any inverted one here anyway in the 4-hour time frame. You couldn't really, because where would it be at? Just at the very end here. Maybe they said the 1 hour time frame, you know. Again, I'm not seeing it. Let's go over to the dollar prices because maybe that's where they meant it at. And we'll start off in the 1 hour time frame looking for yawn head and shoulders on this one. Let's get rid of all the junk off the charts. Not seeing an inverted head and shoulders on this thing either. Go up to the 4 hour time frame. Again, not seeing an inverted head and shoulders on this thing. I mean, if you're going to be looking at this is your upward trend here, and you could have shoulder, head, shoulder, you know, again, and that would make way more sense as being it's a reversal pattern at the top of a move than it would be for an inverted one. So I must have read them wrong. They mustn't have said inverted. They must have said normal head and shoulders, in which case Ross, you're right, and there's head and shoulders all over the shop here. For instance, here on the dollar one, you know, the head and shoulders is one of those common patterns, and it appears all the time. Anyway, all the time. If you want to call this a neckline here, pardon, higher volume, diminishing volume. So often you see a high at the peak of the head, diminishing volume picking up a bit, but crap. So that kind of works well enough. What would the move take us on this thing? So let's call that the neckline, and let's just copy and paste that. $2.15. Well, we've spoken about this enough times on the thing. You know, overall, in terms of the macro trend, I could still remain fairly happy with this if we didn't go any further than sort of $2 maximum. $2 really, $2.15. You know, $2.15. If we have to go down to there, I could easily see the price coming down to 230 and getting some support at that point as well on this thing. You know, should we break down below, and let's call it $2.60. You could be looking towards this as a measured move. You know, we've got a horizontal line in here at 230 as well. So, I tend not to think about these things in terms of entry points for re-upping on longs, but I appreciate that a lot of people out there are hodlers who are looking to add to their overall, you know, investment, in which case, you know, 230, you could say to those people that maybe that's an area for that. But it pains me to say it. You know, it could do. Instead, you know, you got to look at these things in terms of being a trader. You know, and you know, while I appreciate that there's lots of different types of people that watch these channels, we have to operate in terms of trading. And if you were to do that, then you'd be shorting that down there with the breakout of this thing. So, you know, if you wanted to, you could manage your risk in around that 260, looking to potentially take profits at 230 with a holdout, you know, for greediness of profit down there at $2.12, and you could even hold on to some just in case, you know, the market sort of, in case this was just a big capitulation and we went down. You know, there's various different things that people talk about as well in terms of tops and stuff like that. Could this be some sort of distribution type shape on a top? Well, there's not a million miles away difference between head and shoulder type stuff, which is so noisy, and you know, the likes of Wyckoff tops and stuff like that. Anyway, this sort of this sloping trend line that we had here, this formed part of a wedge that we had before. Let's draw the bottom side back in again so we can look at it. And let's remind ourselves about measured moves and say, people talk about minimum measured moves. Well, we don't talk about them on the channel like that because we think that especially for nascent traders, that creates FOMO. So that top section of it wasn't really necessarily worth it up above $3. You know, when $3 itself speaks for itself as a round number target, profit taking target was obviously the $3 level rather than the full measured move up to $3.17. Although, like I say on the way down there when I was talking about it, you know, you could have been greedy and aimed for that and then just said screw it, you know, at 290, taking profit there at 290 instead of whatever off the back of that. Having not got past $3, for instance, you could have done, and all the rest of it. So like, there's that sort of thing. But what are we looking at overall here? Well, we're breaking back into this potential area here of this wedge type thing, and on the way down towards those targets, you've got this lower line here. So could we see support coming in around about $2.50, making a failed head and shoulders? You know, having just sort of faked out and tested it. So that would be my main concern. If you were to be playing this as a head and shoulders, would be this area here overall. I think that's going to have to wrap us up for this one. You know, by the way, just in general, going to the weekly chart just to put this in context. had a hell of a good run of it here. That's been good overall. This low is higher than this low. This high is higher than this high. This could form just part of the natural corrections that you need as part of a trend, and we could be looking towards this remaining as an overall bullish asset in the longer term, and stuff like that. Should we see in the weekly prices it coming up to that $3.50 area? If we have to see prices do something like that as part of this overall, that's okay. That's okay, but really, ultimately, we don't want this area here to have been our high and for us to go back down there. So if you saw things like if it went down to 150, it'd be real sort of problem times. Bearing in mind, if it does this really quickly, and that we could actually see a V-shaped recovery as well in the post-halvening scenario time frame as well. Looking at the monthly chart, there's not much to be learned really overall there, other than the fact that we've had vast amounts of volatility of this coin for the last 3 months. So if you want to take anything away from the monthly time frame at the minute, there's a couple of things you can take away from it, and let's just have a quick look at what they are real quick. So overall last month we closed higher than we had done in the previous month, so we've got this upward trend. Incidentally though, we'd actually closed, there is this broadening here. That's what I'm kind of saying is in a sense, which and there's a lot of volatility. So for the last 3 months, for 2020, let's just call it for 2020, we've seen 40%, 40%. We've seen since 2020, we've seen 106% increase to the upside, followed by a 30-odd%, depending where you draw it from. You could that's in terms of body closes. If I just do it in terms of body closes, right? Then followed by a 40% drop down to the downside, followed by a 70% increase to the upside. So, doing technical analysis every day on this thing for the last few months has meant that there's a lot of trading to be done in between these big trending profit targets. The big macro targets is hard. It's been a tough for the hodlers and whatnot out there in terms of confidence in the market and whatnot. It's been a tough time, it has been in terms of this for the last wee while. Look at the length of this thing. If you're trading this in terms of going from the very top of this candle, that's actually not even the very top, it's not even as high as that, so 74%. So you got this 100 and something percent increase. You got this January increased by 220%, then dropped by 75%, then increased by 208%. This is a very nascent coin, and this is the sort of thing that can happen with it. So over the longer period of time, I'd expect this to calm down quite a lot. But I think I'm just going to leave it at that, wrapping up on that for the video today, to say that while we want to look towards certain things, and we can continue to look towards the cup and handle, for instance, on the 24-hour time frame. I'm absolutely going to keep doing that on the Bitcoin prices, and on the dollar prices. We could look at things like this here, which I'm happy to look at as well. I've pointed out in the past, and I'll point out again, this bar reversal, bump and run reversal pattern here. You could be looking at, for instance, on this thing and whatnot. The volume's not there for it. It doesn't really quite work properly there on a linear chart. But if we move it over to the log chart and reposition this thing so that it actually encompasses different price action, maybe no, does it? It's not there yet. But I don't know. I wouldn't say that that's actually a real pattern necessarily on this thing quite yet. Depends how you would draw it in at. We have had bumps in that sort of things. We've not had the run section. The volume hasn't come in. It could be a failed pattern in that set. There's various different things you could look at. There's lots of different things you could look at. But this is obviously in its nascent state. It's going to have volatility, and it just pays to be patient really on these things. Anyhow, ultimately, we're only a couple of cents away from that 270 area. Just to stop, because we're all out there panicking at what I'm saying. We're only a couple of cents away from 270, whereas totally can be back to going having that bullish mindset again, looking at the cup with handle on the Bitcoin prices, and looking towards upper side targets on this coin. If you stuck through here, then great. We want to see this line here at 270 on the HIT BTC chart be respected, for instance, and come back in again. We've seen our 258 target over here in HIT BTC be you know, it's happened a few times for us over the last wee while. So we know we want to see the prices turn around there. Failing that and dropping down below that area, you could be looking at the head and shoulders towards the downside and looking down towards that $2.15 area, and that's going to have to do it. I've really kind of scraped the barrel with that's everything. I think everything you could possibly need to know from the short to the long-term time frames. And I'm not looking at this thing underneath 4 hours. I'm just not going to do that. It's not worth the stress for the viewers. Thanks so much for tuning in. This video's been way longer than I wanted it to be, but all of them have been today. Hope you have a really fantastic day. I really appreciate everybody who's part of this channel. I massively do, and I really hope that you have the best day and week and month and year and everything possible. Thank you so much for being part of this community. I really genuinely appreciate it, especially the Tezos people. Tezos people being so friendly, you know, and it's such a positive community. Now, it's not guaranteed to stay that way, and with growth and more people getting involved in the community, the Tezos, not mine, community, not ours, not Rocky Outcrop, but I suppose the same thing applies there too, I suppose. But as communities grow, then more sort of small minorities become, you know, instead of, you know, like you can always have assholes, of course you can, but I have to say that the Tezos community, I think, is a very positive one, and that's great, you know, especially whenever it's run. Tezos itself was set up by a married couple and all the rest of it. In some ways that could be good, and in some ways that could be very bad, especially whenever some people back in the formation of Tezos also left the company. There's a lot of bad air there and stuff like that, but I think all that negativity back in the day, which led to downward price action and court cases and everything else, is a thing of the past, and hopefully what I'm looking for is for the volatility to ease off and to more positive collaboration projects coming forth, and the chain link cooperation and stuff like that. I do actually believe in this thing, I suppose, currently, until such times as my belief gets shattered, you know. I suppose I'll say that in the run up to it. I do think this is a good one, and the community is really positive, despite the fact that it's had, you know, court cases and troubles behind the scenes. It's like, I think that proves it, you know. It's had the test on that sense, and it's shown itself to be worthy, which is quite good, you know. Of course, I'm happy to eat my words. Strong opinions, hold them weekly. I'll eat humble pie on that anytime I'm proven wrong. No bother, I don't mind. Humble pie tastes fine if you have it with a bit of cream and syrup. Catch you next time.